This is Gemara Metziah, Daf Tzadi Aleph. Again, a tremendous thank you for all those that participated in the wonderful Torah Anytime fundraiser, allowing us to be able to continue learning together. We pick it up at the bottom of Tzadi Amid Bees. We are approximately Itmar, Chasma. We're approximately, where are we? Chasma Bekol, Venhiga Bekol. 5 lines from the bottom, says the Gemara, what is the story if you do a chasima, not with a physical chasima, not with a physical muzzle, but rather Bekol, or Venhiga Bekol, or if you have an Isser Kilayim, 2 animals, and you cause them to work the field together with your voice. Rav Yechon Amar Chayev, Rish Lakish Amar Potter. Rav Yechon Amar Chayev, why? Akimas Piv, Have Maisa, when you open your mouth to talk, the chasima, the akima of your piv, that's called a maisa. Shaksham Potter, kala la have maisa. So fundamental shayla is there kol a maisa, and the application of it in our sugya is: can you perform an act of chasima? Can you perform an act of kalayim, seeking, utilizing your kol and nothing else? So Reish Lakish. You said your potter. Asked Rav Yechon as we turn over to Tzadi Aleph Amid Aleph. Loisha Adam Rashi Lahamir. Says the Braisa, says the Mishnah, excuse me. Loisha Adam Rashi Lahamir does not mean that a person is allowed to hamir, to substitute an animal for an animal with kedusha. Elashem hamir, but if he does it, mumar, it works. But v'soivig esarabayim, but lamaisa, you get malchus. So what do we see over here? We see over here that even though all one is doing is changing animal A for animal B, which of course is a mere designation, there's no mere maisa that is actual done, and yet we see there's going to be malchus. Kashan Reish Lakish, you said something done with your mouth is potter. So Amar Lei, Reish Lakish responds, Amani Rav Yehudi, this Rav Yehuda, Amar Lav Shein by Maisa, like in a love. Says Reish Lakish, is that a kasha on me? You don't see that it's called a maisa. You just see you get malchus. Why do you get malchus? Because it's a lav shein by maisa. And Rav Yehuda holds lav shein by maisa still has malchus. Says Gemara, Mima says Mukhlak Rav Yehuda, can you say that? Vakatani Reish, the Reish of that Mishnah says, I call me in anyone can perform the hamara to substitute animal A for a B, whether men or women. Ravina, but we pondered, I call asuyimai. What does it mean, hakol? We explained lasuye yoirish. It's coming to include a yoirish, someone who inherits an item, and he as well, do like Rav Yehuda. Why? The Rav Yehuda Amar yoirish ena meimer. So from the other case of the Mishnah that said hakol, hakol includes even a yoirish. That's clearly not like Rav Yehuda. Because Rav Yehuda holds Rav Yehuda Aimer yoirish ena meimer, yoirish ena yisaymech. He's not allowed to do the hamara, nor is he allowed to do the semicha. Answers the Gemara, Haitana Savlik of a Sebachada, Bachada, not a kasha. He holds like Rav Yehuda in one says Reish Lakish, and not like the other, so no question. Tanu Rabbanan, and with that the Gemara leaves this machlekes Reish Lakish of Yechanan, whether hamara or kalayim bekol, and we move on to another form of chasima. Tanu Rabbanan, achaysim es abara v'dashba, loike u'mishalim, says the Braisa, someone who muzzles an animal and someone who threshes that with that animal gets malchus. Umishalim dalid kabin lepara v'gimel kabin lechamar, and he has to pay dalid kabin for a cow and 3 kav for a chamar. Says the Gemara, this is the estimate amount that the animal eats while threshing. So says the Gemara, ask the Gemara, but Allah is you don't get malchus and get killed for the same aveira. So how over here, well, how double jeopardy? You never get 2 things. So how are you getting malchus and have to pay tashlumim? Amar Abaye, Hamani Rabbi Meir. This is Rabbi Meir that holds what? Amar Loikeu Mishalim, that indeed there is both malchus and tashlumim. Famous Shita Rabbi Meir. Rava Amar, another teretz. Esnan asura taira. When it comes to an esnan, utilizing an animal to pay for zenos, afilu ba'al imai, it still is asur, and therefore it's going to have this double isser, both the monetary and the malchus. Rapapa Amar, a third teretz, mishas meshicha chayiv labim zaneisel. That classically, that when are you chayiv to feed the animal? Mishas meshicha, when you pull the animal. Umelki loy laki, but you don't get malchus. Umelki loy laki ad shas chasima, until you actually muzzle the animal, meaning different stages that it happens. So 3 different terutzim, how we find that both one could get malchus and have to have tashlumim. Either it's Rameir, it's through Kimta of Asnan, or it's at 2 different parts of, there's an obligation at the Mashiach and then at the actual Chasima. Says the Gemara, Amar Papa, Hani Mili, the following they asked the Rabba Barabba, and they explained it le'isser. Chada kilchasa, v'chada delav kilchasa. So that's a little bit of introduction. Now we're going to get involved. And what were the shaylos of Rapapa? And of course, we're only getting involved in this because Rapapa answered, Mishas Meshicha, Chayiv Lam Zaneisel, and Malchus, you're not Chayiv till later. So we take a segue into halachas of Rav Papa. So Ba'imine, they asked, Ma'u lolush as isa bechalaf. Are you allowed to knead bread with dough? A totally random, no sheikh is halacha. Again, it's just because it's Rav Papa. Are you allowed to make dairy bread? Upashtali surah. And they said that it is hisr, asr, kilchasan, that is the halacha. Titania, as you learned in a brayse in lashon as isa, one is not allowed to knead the dough b'chalav with milk. V'im lash kolapas kula surah. All the bread is asr. Why? Then they hergal aver, because it could cause one to do averis, as bread is usually eaten with meat. Of course, a nice timely halacha as we're, getting ready for Shavuos, one has to be cognizant that you're not allowed to make dairy bread, or terim of simanim and whatnot. But the pashtus is to make bread, dairy is aser. Ki yaitzabai. Similarly, ein tashin es atanur ba'alya. You're not allowed to smear grease of the fatty tail on an oven. Vim touch kolabas kula asura. Ad sheyasik es atanur, until you fire up the oven and burn away the fat. That's halacha number 1 of Rav Papa, which is la halacha. And the other halach that they asked was, are you allowed to enter into 2 different types of animals into one deer, into one karel? And he said it's aser. To lav kilchas, that's not the halacha. Why not? 10 lines to the bottom. The first line is kilchas to Amar Shmuel. Teaches Shmuel ubena afayim achiru derech mina afayim. That when it comes to niyuf, teaches Shmuel, when it comes to adulterers, it's only aser when you actually know that they did a ma'isa sinos. Putting in a male and female animal into one deer is not aser. The only iser is going to be by climb if you actually mate chovish veres, like an applicator into the tube. That's the only case that it's going to be aser. So Shmuel said that it's aser. That was, or Papa said it's aser, which was the lav kilchasa. So Masiv Ravachtu Boi Barami, as Ravachtu Boi Barami, Ilu Nemar, if the Pasuk would have said Behem Techolos Arbia, then I would have said, like you just taught us, Shmuel, that you couldn't hold the animal as it is mating. Says the Torah, Kalayim, Achiza Nami Loi, it's us even without Achiza, which was seemingly more like Rav Papa. So as Rav Achtubai Barami, Shmuel, you just taught that it's only us if you actually do the Maisa, you actually made it be a dayim, but from the Psukim, it would seem not that way. Explains the Gemara, my achiza, hachnasav, my karle achiza, lishna ma'alya, just talking in a nice lashon, and therefore it's not a kasha at all. Continues the Gemara, and again, we're in the middle of a segue because we spoke about a dinner of Rav Papa. The Rav Papa said a teretz that there's only isers. You get the monetary obligation when you do the meshicha to feed the animal, and then the malchus doesn't come to you actually do the chasima. So once Rav Papa said that halacha, we went into 2 other halachas of Rav Papa. One, that you can't make dairy bread. A second, about kalayim. Once we're on the kalayim, we take a segue off of that. So we're on a segue of a segue. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda, 3 lines to the bottom. Min be'minai motor lehachlis b'mechal b'shlei feres. 2 different minim. One is allowed to actually allow them to meet, to help it meet. Afilu misham pritus alek, and there's no pritus even to help the animal have children. My time above it, it's a tarit, because this is the avodah. You have to have, your animals need to have kids. So you're preoccupied with work. So even though it's at some level a maisa pritzos to take the aver and insert into the other animal, the maisa is mutter. As we turn over to Sadi Aleph Amid Beis, Ilu Nemar, if the pasuk would have said about if the pasuk would have said that an animal you should not make to kalayim who dasar min b'minai shari min b'minai is going to be mutter min b'minai nami achiza in achnasa. But as even min b'minai, it would seem, what is mutter? What's mutter is only achiza, is holding the animal and allowing it to mate, but actually achnasa, actually doing the act of mating, inserting the aver into the other animal, that would seem like it's aser. Answers Gemara, my achiza, what does achiza mean? It means achnasa, ma'ikole achiza lishnama aliyah. Just talking in a nicer lashon. And we conclude part A of the Shiram, Rav Ashi, Amilsa Ba'i Minei, Teveiram Nechemia Reish Kelus Samal Lahaklas Mim Minai, V'She'enai Minu Ladir, you let it put it all into one corral. Kiva Dika Mine Basa Minigar. Do we say because there's the min and the min, so it's going to go and mate with its own min? Or do we say no? Over here it's also aser because the mice is another min in the corral, and it might go and you might cause kalayim upashli surah delaike halchasa. Why misham pritzusa dahavdi? Because of the pritzus of the avadim, the maisa. But the real halacha is that it is not aser. And we continue with the Mishnah, and it was just because the priestess of Avadim, because we were worried that it would cause the animals to mate with not their kind. Excuse me, I said it wrong. Priestess to Avdi is because the Psukim are talking about Avid Kananim, that they're not allowed to because they were not makbun mitzvahs. Is therefore we're being more machmir to not even put min b'mina v'shein emina, even though be'etzem it is mutter. We continue with the Mishnah. Haya'isa biyadav avalai beraglo avalai biyadav. What is the story if the worker is working with his hands, not his legs not his hands? Afilu b'ktefai, even if he's working with his shoulder, carrying something, hareza oichal, that's called working with the item, and you're allowed to eat the produce you're working with. No. Says Yehuda, the only time you're allowed to eat midin deraisa is if he's working both with his hands and with his feet. Says the Gemara, my time. Why does the Tanakama hold that you're allowed to? Kitava b'kamriyecha b'chol ma'ita of it, because he learns from the pasuk that says when you come into the vineyard of your friend. From there we learn out b'chol man da'avid, any work that is done, it's enough to allow you to eat the produce. Rav Yehuda, says the Rav Yehuda, until you do biyadav v'raglav, you have to actually do. We have to work with your full body. Says the Gemara, my time. Rav Yehuda, kishar ma shar she has to biyadav v'raglav. So too when it comes to a worker, she has to biyadav v'raglav. So machlekes Tanakam and Rav Yossi. Ask the Gemara, Ba'i Rabba Ravuna, we're 8 lines from the second Mishnah. Tashba Vazim Tarnegailim. So when thresh is with chickens and geese, and they only have 2 legs, Mao, Rav Yehuda Mao, but Kol Kaichai Be'inan. Do you need Kol Kaichai? Meaning his whole limud was he learned out from an animal that it does Yadavar Aglav, meaning all 4s. So do we say that what's the siba? The siba is not the all 4s. The siba is that it has to just be the kol kaichai. On the chicken and the geese, it's only 2 legs, but of course that's called kaichai. And there's no yadav raglav, it's only 2 legs. Says Gemara, we're gonna have to wait for such a teretz. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Ravua, Pailin achlei hilchu shesi ve'erev begas oichlen anavim. Workers until they've gone both the length and the both ways, the length and the width of the wine press, they're allowed to eat the grapes, but then when they go back and forth, then they can not only eat the grapes, they also could drink the wine. And that concludes the second part of this year, which is at what level one has to work in order to allow to be eaten the produce. Is it a full body, legs and arms? Is it just any part of the body? And what is the equation when it comes to chicken and geese, etc.? And we continue with another Mishnah. Halfway down to the Aleph, if someone is working with figs, he can't eat enough. You're allowed to eat that which you're working with and not something else. However, but he's allowed to hold himself back from eating until he reaches the place of the better fruit. Meaning, if he's working with te'inim, he's allowed to wait until he gets to better te'inim and eat them there. Only while you're working. Excuse me. All these halachas we didn't say that you're allowed to eat while you're working. What do the Chacham say? And they can eat walking road to road. So we have an extra kula that the Chachamim are allowing because of Heishiv Aveda. As we'll see that in order so that there's not going to be a loss, Chazal made a gezerah that you eat when you walk from row to row, you eat on the way back, etc., that after you drop off one load, you're allowed to eat afterwards. And the reason for these cases is, even though you're not really working, but Chazal allowed that in these cases, the worker can eat because the person who's employing him will be happy that he'll be eating and therefore he'll be able to work better. So Yibayilahu, 5 lines from the white lines, so the Mishnah said you're working with te'inim, you can't eat anavim. Anavim can't eat te'inim. Now, what if it's the same item, but a different vineyard? Do you have to have the actual things? You're picking these grapes and putting it into the basket. Those you eat, and therefore you should be allowed to. And if you're going to tell me in the last narrow line, that we're eating on one type of gefen, you're not allowed to eat a different type of gefen. How could a shar eat from that which it is attached? That this is going back in that which we said a few days ago, that the shar is allowed to eat as it is working. But the question is, how does it eat the attached produce? It's pulling the wagon, and it's clearly eating from a different area. So then how is that allowed if the whole din is only that which your mom is picking? So Amar Rav Shisha Breid Rav Idi explains Rav Shisha Breid Rav Idi Bishracha. The ox can eat, it's a long vine, so the actual vine that it's going to be stepping on can eat from that vine itself. So Tashemas, now going back, says the Gemara, let's answer a shayla. What's the story of eating begefen acher? Tashma Yosef v'teinim leichel anavim ateinim v'teinim daim v'teinim v'anavim oichel. We can be medayik from the Mishnah. Only teinim and anavim you cannot. But if it's teinim which is similar to teinim v'anavim, which would be what on a different gefen, then it would be mutter. From what's the case of the Mishnah? So clearly you can yes eat it. No, it's no raya. We talk about hanging one over the other, and therefore within one gefen you could have 2 different parts of the gefen, and therefore we don't have a raya. Tashema, 5 lines down, the Gemara tries again. The Mishnah said that he's allowed to hold himself back from eating until he reaches to better produce and eat over there. So proves the Gemara. If you're allowed to tell me that eat in a different gefen, so why it's the big chiddush of the Mishnah that you can eat from the better stuff? That's the shayla. What about his wife and kids? Tashema, we try one more time. What did we add on? The Gzeir D'Rabbanan, the so Savrua Mahalech Dami. That as you're walking, it's like you're doing the actual mice. So there's this din D'Rabbanan allowing you to eat, but Midaraisa Loyachel. But Midaraisa you're not allowed to eat. On the deraisa level, they made a dinderabana that you can eat after you transported the produce. But midaraisa, you're not allowed to eat from gefen acher. Says the Gemara, really, I'll tell you, 4 lines from the bottom of gefen acher. Umahalech, lav gives meisim dami. And it's not therefore you don't have a raya. Meaning every time you have 2 permutations, you don't necessarily have a raya. Because I'll tell you that really mahalech as you're transporting is not like an oisa ma'isa b'yadayim, and that's the reason why not. Ikedi amri, says the Gemara, a different raya that we could bring. Savrua mahalech lav koisa ma'isem dami. V'hainu taimon. This is the reason the midaraisa. Why not leave midaraisa 3 lines from the bottom? Misham lav koisa ma'isem dami. Because you didn't do a ma'isa. Ha'isa ma'isa, but if you did a ma'isa, then acham d'rais. Alma, so we have a raya the other way. Says the Gemara, really, you would not be able to eat another gefen. So again, we're not able to bring our rayos. We turn over to Sadi Bezim at Aleph because we always could be madche. The Gemara ends off that we don't have a rayo whether you're allowed to eat begafen acher. We'll pick it up from here. B'siyata dishmaya.